Okay, so to kick things off, I want to talk a little bit about, where this all came from. And, when I started at Winning by Design, one of my first few projects, I listened to a bunch of customer success calls. Has anyone here, raise your hand, has anyone here listened to calls that your customer success team has been doing? If you haven't, I encourage you to do this. And here's why. I listened to a whole bunch of calls and I heard a few things. One, I heard some incredible passion, thinking in solutions, this always willingness to help, this, unbelievable. I mean, this is customer success, at its core, being positive, being supportive. How can I help you? These are all incredible things. But the other thing I heard, and one of the types of calls I listen to most often, are executive business reviews. And part of the executive business review, as you know, is often this concept of introducing any new functionality or any features that happen throughout, that you want to share with them. And when I listened to these calls, all I heard was feature, 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 feature. All right. Oh, let me tell you about this. I'll tell you about this. Pitching. And the other thing I found myself screaming, listening to these calls, was why? Why did they say that? Why did you ask that? And of course, I'm not on the call, so I can't actually, ask that. So I just get to be infuriated while listening to it, while the CSM on the other end of the call recording didn't talk about this. We want to ask why. So I always made this rule for any team, if you've ever been involved, and my biggest rule is you cannot leave a question. You cannot leave a call with a customer with question with why. And why do we want to know that? And so often, why, asking that question, why, uncovers the impact that we are looking for. And this is so much that was missing in those feature, talking about product, talking about those elements. We miss the impact that those features, that new functionality has on your customers. And so drawing that parallel, drawing that connection to that functionality to impact is so unbelievably critical. I'm going to encourage you, if you have a question, throw it in the chat. Beth and Sarah are going to be monitoring the chat, and we are going to, we'll definitely do that. But I think you were raising your hand, which was awesome, just to be like, yes, I listened to calls, which I love. That was great. So one of the reasons we do this, and one of how we're going to get, what we're going to talk about today, is how to get to rapid growth. And when I talk about rapid growth, there's something really cool here. So if anyone know, bamboo is one of the coolest plants, because in 3 years, it can grow. It can by definitely double its size, but sometimes get to 5 times its size. And one of the other, so you have this rapid growth, but the other aspect of it is that it's sustainable. It's one of the most sustainable product or plants in our ecosystem, because it grows so quickly, but it doesn't drain all those resources. And if you look at, there's this new trend happening. This is some of our clients, and the one of the commonality of these clients is that they're unicorns. They've had this rapid growth, but not all of them have grown sustainably. And there's this new trend. It's been happening for at least a year, if not a bit longer, where this concept of grow at all costs does not exist anymore. Even VCs are starting to say this. We want to see rapid growth, but it can't be this spend, grow at all costs. It needs to be under the guise of sustainability. And why do I talk about impact and sustainability when we talk about CS 2.0? Is because these are the core elements to how companies can grow at that rapid growth clip in a sustainable way. So today we're going to talk about some core principles of CS 2.0. We're going to cover the recurring revenue model, the different ways to think about the CS model, how to drive profitability, and how to improve performance. How does that sound to everybody? Sound good? Thumbs up? Awesome. Seeing some head nods. That is great. So the first thing I want to kick off with is the concept of first principles. When I say first principles, throw in the chat, who knows what I mean by first principles? I'll give you an example while you're thinking about it, but I'd love for you to throw in the chat an example of a first principle is something that you know to be true, and you use that truth to build upon it in order to go forward and do other things. So for example, we know the principle of one of the first principles is gravity. So if we step off of a cliff, we are going to fall off that cliff. That drives our decisions in life, not to just randomly walk off cliffs. It's a very fundamental first principle. Does anyone want to share with us any first principles that they know they know of, or that they use to guide their personal life or their life, managing in the world of customer success. I'll give another example while you all think of one. So, one of the first principles, listen to your customers. That's a good one. One of the first principle, but why, right? So what's the first principle? Why are we listening to our customers? So just to dig in a little bit there. Another example of a first principle is, I love this example. I'm not the biggest sports fan, but I do really get into, sometimes, the end of the season for championship games. And the Golden State Warriors, if you're a basketball fan, they changed the first principles of basketball. First principles of basketball were always hire the tallest players you could find that had the best ability to score on a 2-point basket. So the basketball game was built on the first principle of score as many 2-point baskets as you possibly can, more than the other team. Well, when the Golden State Warriors, they changed the game by hiring slightly shorter players who had a better accuracy at scoring 3-point shots. And that changed the mathematics, that changed the first principle of the game, and they were able to win. But I'd love you to think about what are some first principles that you have. So I'm going to share with you a few first principles that we're going to talk about that might be changing the game of customer success. So the first principle is recurring revenue is the result of recurring impact. Now let's get into that. That's a bit of a heavy one. So recurring revenue. But what is recurring revenue? Recurring revenue, we often think that it has to do with our sales funnel. Does this look familiar? We have the top of the funnel, we have leads come in, they turn into opportunities, and they close and they create opportunity. We think that this is a recurring revenue model. That's what we think it is, but it's not. Why is this not a recurring revenue model? Let's look at that bottom. We've got revenue, but we don't have recurring. So we're all work for recurring revenue businesses, yet none of us are actually driving recurring revenue if you're just working on this funnel, if you're just focused on filling that funnel with new leads. So we are going to flip this funnel on the side. We are going to turn it over and we are going to create a bow tie, because on the right-hand side, on the customer success side, that's where you get the recurring piece. And that's where you get recurring impact. If we think about what we do in customer success, we get our customers to first value. We help them achieve the impact they were looking to get when they first purchase, and they continue to purchase. So this recurring impact happens, and then customers buy again, and they upsell and they cross-sell and they advocate and they refer you new business. And that's where the recurring piece comes. So recurring revenue is a result of recurring impact. I'm going to share with you a different way of looking at it. So we think about how we are often trying to get to this goal of a certain amount every year. We're trying to achieve a certain amount of revenue. Every year we're trying to hit certain targets. So what we do is we have this maniacal focus on winning new deals. Let's avoid churn. Let's make our customers love you, right? We're constantly filling this funnel in order to create that curve, that exponential curve of getting to hitting that goal. But is this the only path to get there? So if you think about this concept of achieving recurring impact, let's focus on successful customers at the outset. Now, if we focus on those customers and we focus on those key moments in the customer journey, and we think about achieving impact early on, creating those amazing customer moments, and then growing together, we are now creating recurring impact amongst those customers that's going to continue to create recurring revenue. So it's not about filling that funnel, but it's about circling it back. So it's about upselling your existing customers. It's about getting them to renew and continue to renew, but it's also about filling them. If you think about some of your best customers, if you've created if you create impact with them, they go ahead and leave and they go to another company, they're going to buy you again. They're going to buy you faster. They might even spend more because they understand how valuable you are to their organization. They also will refer you to new customers, and we know that referral leads. So it's about using those customers. And so it's even okay to lose customers who aren't achieving that recurring impact, because they're going to increase your cost to serve. They're going to increase, they're even more challenging. Think about those really difficult customers. They just aren't achieving that recurring impact. how difficult they are, how much of a drain they are to your organization. If you focus on the ones that are achieving that impact and achieving that recurring impact, you get that recurring revenue. That first principle is a big one. I want to just stop for a minute and see if anyone has any questions about it. Give you a chance to think about it and let it sink in. If you got it, give me a thumbs up, just so I know that you're all paying attention and we got, okay, cool. All right. Sounds like we're good. Okay, good. Love to see the thumbs up. Awesome. Okay. So if we're going to go to the second concept, so now I want to build on that. So now that we know that first principle is true, right? So recurring revenue is an outcome of recurring impact. We're going to build on that truth. So the principle number 2, we think that the model we use to drive, to think about revenue and customer success is additive, but in fact, it's multiplicative. And if I get through today saying multiplicative the right way the entire time, that's a huge win for me. Okay, so I want you all to close your eyes, and I promise I won't go to any more slides while you do this. And I want you to write in the chat. And I really want participation today. There's one thing, if you just want to see me talk, I'll upload this to YouTube. You can always see me talk there. The whole point of you coming today is to interact with us so you can get more out of it. So I want to see you participate. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to really think about what is the impact of your CS. So the impact of CS is going to be fundamentally similar everywhere, but sometimes in unique situations with your own clients, you can even get more specific. What is the impact of your CS? And I really want to see some things here. Beth and Sarah, feel free to share as well. I'm super curious. Or some things that you've seen. Driving change, that's a big one. Driving change so that we got some coming in here, creating advocates by showcasing success. These are some great ones. Let me give everyone another. Uncovering new needs. Aligning corporate objectives, creating value. Yeah, this is great. Keep thinking about it. So when we think about customer success, these are all some really great things of what customer success means to your organization and means to you. When we think about it, it's just like so often either to you or often to other people on your executive team, it tends to be this box of customer success. And, customers come in, then you have whatever we think customer success is, and then you have lifetime value. And what happens inside this box? Let's get into this for a minute. So this is something that we see all the time. We get into customer success organizations, we'll start talking to them. And what we find is the path by which we fill this box of customer success can be a little bit unknown, can be a little bit, on this journey of, and if one question I often ask CS leaders is, when your customer success team comes into work every single day, do they know exactly what they're going to do? Do they have a proactive prescriptive process that they're going to follow in order to help your customers achieve impact? Or is it kind of like every single day, what should I do today? How should I manage my customers? What things have they emailed me with overnight that I need to respond to? So we have this myriad of journey of what happens inside this box, but ultimately we do have a sense of what's supposed to happen, right? We do know that, and how we measure customer success is we earn new revenue from new customers. They come to us. Then we add in expansion revenue from existing customers. Then we subtract churned revenue from those customers who decide to leave us. And there we have our model of net new revenue. So we are constantly adding in how much and how many, and then we're measuring, we're measuring the love aspect, what, our NPS score. And at the end of it, we actually factor in what it's all costing us. So we have this additive model that we think is how we actually calculate customer success. But what if we're using the wrong model? I want to go back to that bow tie funnel that we saw for a moment and that recurring impact model. And I want to open that up a little bit here and talk about what that is in customer success. And so customer success, we have 3 main functions. We have onboarding of our customers, impact and use, renew and grow. And each of those moments can represent a conversion rate. When we talk about conversion rates, we often think about those in the world of in sales, right? So if you've ever looked at, if you've ever been part of a sales metrics meeting, we often think about, okay, we're going to convert MQLs to marketing qualified leads. What's our conversion rate from those to sales qualified leads to opportunities to close? Well, on the customer success side, we actually have the ability to track those metrics and to consider that on the right-hand side of the funnel as well. How many of our customers successfully onboard? How many of our customers get to first value within a certain time period? How many of our customers achieve recurring impact so that they renew and that they grow? And so what we do is we have each of those moments represent a metric that we can now multiply. So we multiply our net new customers times the number of who successfully onboard in that right amount of time, multiply by the ones who renew, multiply by the number of periods they renew, multiply by the expansion revenue. So we keep multiplying. So the actual conversion rate or metrics go from adding and subtracting to multiplying. And when you multiply multiple times, you create exponential impact. And this is the fundamentals of how we're going to break down thinking about that exponential growth curve and flipping it from always just adding new leads and subtracting the ones who churn to creating impact sooner. When we think about how and what this means to the exponential growth curve is if you multiply, so you have your lifetime value, a number of customers or length of time. If you multiply one time, you create a linear graph. You create sort of a straight trajectory. But if you multiply by the number again and again, that is how you create that hockey stick that so many of us are looking for. And what creates that hockey stick is the number of periods, the number of times that they renew. And it gets even bigger when they have upsells. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but it gets even bigger when they have upsells on top of that. And here's the really cool thing. This is what, this is really where we start to really change the game from this maniacal focus on sales and investing so much into driving new leads to investing with our existing customers. So if we know that the hockey stick of revenue gets steeper, the number of times your clients stay with you and renew, the number of periods, let's look at that lifetime value model. You have new revenue times retention plus upsell to the power of the number of periods they stay with you. And guess who's responsible for that? Who's responsible for that? Anyone? Anyone on the chat? Anyone want to go off mute and shout it out? Kim, I know you have it in it. Yeah, there we go. CS. We're always taught, like for so long, I've been in customer success for way too long. CS is always taught that we are, considered a cost center. Right? We're here to support our customers, and therefore how we're measured, we never get budget because how we're measured is based on, the cost to serve. But we drive so much of that revenue, this is going to flip. So that's principle number 2. The way that we model CS is multiplicative. All right. Now for the third principle. Are you ready for this? Does anyone have any questions about that? Does anyone want to jump in here? It's a very quiet chat this morning. It's a Wednesday. Come on, we should be energized. We're halfway through the week. All right, all right, I see some good conversations happening overall in the chat right now. So that's good. I love that Sarah and Beth, you're lucky you have Sarah and Beth who are just like, CS geniuses participating here and answering some great questions in CS on the chat. All right, principle number 3. This is a topic I am unbelievably passionate about. The right way to measure customer success is with impact and not CSAT. All right, I'm prepared to get a little bit of controversy here, but here's what I want to know. In the chat, how do you, it's a good one. How do you measure? We'll talk about that in a minute. How do you measure your CS team? How are you measuring right now? What are you using? I'm guessing we're going to see a lot of NPS, but how are you measuring right now? What are you doing? Share with me. Net revenue retention, yes. NRR, NPS, that's very, very common. And that's good. Those are, we want to think about NRR. It's okay if you throw an NPS. Everyone, everyone's doing it. No one wants to talk about it. Okay, I'm going to throw something. I'm going to give you something here to think about. This is something I did with, we had one of the clients that I was, actually when I was running account management, we had something called churn. Our churn was so bad. We called it churned. Like that's how bad we named it that. And one initiative we launched was 6 months to the renewal date. My account management team called every single one of our decision makers and asked this question: if your renewal was tomorrow, would you renew? Now, when we think about actually measuring impact, think about how impactful it is to get a stat saying 50% of our customers or 80% of our customers who were surveyed, who were asked, if your renewal was 6 months out from the renewal date, if your renewal was tomorrow, would you renew? And X% said yes, and X% said no. How much more impactful would that be for your organization, as opposed to some, satisfaction survey, right? Now we actually know. Now we actually have a quantifiable metric to share with us to show here's what actually our pipeline of renewable customers looks like. And here's the really fun thing. Can I get anyone to volunteer to do a role play? I might ask Beth to do this just because, it's the first one. And, so here's what we're going to do, Beth. I'd like for you to be the client. Okay. And I am going to call on you and I'm going to ask you this question. And you can answer however you want. This is how much fun this is going to be.
And by the way, we didn't prep at all, so I have no idea what she's about to do.
Yeah, Beth just agreed to moderate this session, late last night or some early morning. And she's like, "Is there anything I need to know?" And I'm like, "No, just make sure if there's any questions in the chat that you answer them." So, but this
I will say, by the way, just really quick, there's a bunch of really good questions interspersed in the chat. So if you do that, we're tracking them, so we can we can bring them back to Julie at different breaks or points when it's appropriate. So just know we see those.
Okay, Beth.
Okay, shoot.
Thank you for being such a great customer. Hey, you've been with us for about half a year so far. You've been with us for I just want to know, if your renewal was tomorrow, would you renew?
I honestly am not sure right now. I'd have to think through it a little bit more to understand and justify to my CRO and to my CFO, because we're just being really careful about budget this year. And so I'm definitely going to need to get a better handle on what it's doing and why we should keep it.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me. May I ask, what impact would you need to see in order to be able to make that justification to your CRO?
Yeah,
right,
well,
pause here.
Okay.
Pause here. Because that's a really important, right there, right? What I want is an answer. And I love that, Beth, you were great. You went into more detail and I love how much thought you put into a fictitious situation. You took the long, you're like, well, you really thought about that in this imaginary situation. Okay. Would I renew? I don't know. That was great. So I got a great answer. I got a no. I don't care. I just wanted an answer, right? Because what I was able to do, and I didn't say, oh, that's too bad. Why not? I don't care why not. What I want to know is, what impact are you looking to achieve in order to renew? Now, that is something we can talk about. That is an answer that she can go back and think about, and it's very actionable. Okay, this is what I want to be able to show to my CRO. This is what we're going to work towards. And if just on the flip side, if you get a yes, the follow-up question to that is, I like to say it like this, but, to be more formal, you would say, what would make it even more impactful? How could we make this, more impactful for your organization? But I always like to say, what would make this a slam dunk? What would make this you screaming off the rooftops, or even maybe sharing with the other divisions that aren't using this? and to go deeper. I'll tell you, I did this with the team, and 100% of customers that we were able to speak to, whether they said yes or no, 100% of them renewed. That is how powerful asking that question with enough lead time provides you, as opposed to, hey, how likely are you to refer us to a friend? So I'm seeing a few questions about this. How would that work for digital? How would you, how often? I would not ask that too often, right? You want to ask that. So the timing is really critical. You want to ask that at a time when you have enough time to actually make a difference. So in a 1-year contract, I really like doing it at the 6-month mark, because you have half a year to fix anything that's not going well, but it also provides them enough time to have achieved some level of impact. On a 3-year contract, what I would probably do is give them at least 18 months to start to achieve that impact, and then potentially ask it then, and then ask it again, sort of 8 to 6 months out from their contract renewal. And then also from a digital standpoint, you can totally digitize that, right? You can actually just ask that question. If your renewal is tomorrow, would you renew? Yes or no? And then just make sure that you have some things that you can do to follow up on, right? So even just, collecting that information. But I have to say, we are too lazy in the way that we survey our customers. We are so, we don't want to work hard to get this information yet. So we're happy with this like NPS score that we don't do much about. Yet, if we actually put a little bit more effort in it, what we get is the opportunity to be more proactive and more on top of things to help us out with those other metrics. And when we think about this, so there's this one point in time to ask this around the renewal date, but there's other times. And so if you go back to that model around customer success and those key moments, onboard, right? That CR5, getting customers to onboard, get to first value in the right time. Think about measuring the onboarding moments that matter, in a similar way, getting to impact, getting them to renew, getting that expansion. All of those are key metrics that we should be tracking and measuring. Okay. Now we're going to get to the crux of this, which is profitability. This is such a different way to think about things, because we are now trying to build sustainable businesses, and sustainable businesses are built on profitability. So here is our 4th principle. Customer success is the greatest way to drive profitability, right? We've just, we're all building on each other. This should be very obvious, and here's why. All right. Who knows? Throw in the chat. Before I move on to profitability, Beth, Sarah, are there any other questions that I didn't catch that are relevant to any of these things that I should answer before moving on?
I've been responding to some things, but I think there's a couple that I think we should get to a little bit later.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions pertaining to any of this that they didn't?
There is actually, I will call out a little bit. There's a little bit of a theme with asking the probing questions, like how to go about that, but you might get to that later or want to spend a little bit more time, because that could be a big one.
Okay, we could, let's do that a bit later. Let's make sure we get through the content and we can chat a bit about the probing questions. Okay, so throw in the chat, who knows how much on average it costs to acquire a new customer? Do it in months. So is it like a 10-month payback period? Is it a year? What is it? What do we all think it is? 10 to 12 months, 12 months. These are good guesses. So that's actually what I built my model on as well. I built it on a very generous 10 months. Recent research has come out to say that it's actually 12 to 18 months. EJ, you just said 16 months, which is a little bit scary when we think about customers churning after a year. Like you just spent, an extra 6 months of your revenue to, achieve nothing. But we're looking at around that. I built my model in 10 months, to make it a little bit more generous there. So if we think about a contract that's $100,000 a year, and we subtract about 10 months of that contract for the cost of the customer acquisition, and then cost to serve tends to be around 20 to 40%. We're going to do it at 20%. All right. So cost to serve is going to be 20%.
Well,
Oh, we got to mute whoever that is. Ella, maybe you can find that person and just get on them. Happy for you to unmute to jump in a question, but if you're talking to your family, let's keep that, or your dog barking. So cost to serve. So that first year we're losing. And again, we've been pretty generous with our numbers and we're still losing money, right? We are paying to keep them. Now let's look at year 2. All right. So you have that same contract value. You have your 20% cost to serve. And now we have an upsell. So we can think about upsells. So if you are a platform, it is very reasonable to have a 68% upsell or increase in cost every single year. You're a platform, you're investing in your product every single year. If you are, other ways to think about upsell are adding new seats, adding new users, adding new features. Okay, so we should always be thinking that every single one of our customers should be increasing their spend with us year over year. And there's a variety of different ways to think about that. So at a 6% upsell, again, pretty conservative estimates, we all of a sudden have in year 2 a substantial amount of profitability. And if you think about what that could be year 3, year 4, as we increase our upsell, so next year we're looking at a contract value of $106,000. Your cost to serve stays the same. You upsell another 6%. Your profitability more than doubles, and you keep building on that. I'm going to break it down and just another way to look at it. So this was like just fun modeling that frankly, someone who really does not enjoy math so much, really enjoyed actually doing this modeling because it created these like crazy aha moments for me when thinking about the true impact of customer success. And so very often we tie upsells with the end of the contract, right? Okay, your renewal is coming up. Okay, we're going to think about an increase of 6%, or we're going to talk to you about this new functionality. But let's look at what happens. So, if we're going to do that, so scenario 1 is we don't upsell, pretty flat growth. Scenario 2 is we have an annual upsell of about 4%, and we have some annual churn. If we think about, and this is with a book of business of about 20 customers at an ACV of 100,000. Now, what happens if we have what I call micro upsell? So what happens if we take a portion of those 20 customers and we actually upsell them throughout the year quarterly? So 25% of those customers, so it's a base of customers, we upsell, and then we're continuously building the base. Look how much more revenue you are earning from those customers at the end of year 3. Your upsell rate stays the same, your churn rate stays the same, but because you're upselling them earlier, you're getting more revenue in to build on. So this is really important when you think about all the different ways that you can upsell, and the fact that and how you plan out how your customer success team engages with your customers, having them talk about new opportunities for growth sooner at different moments is going to drive a substantial impact to the revenue of your organization. Workshop time. Who is excited? You've been great. Lots of really fantastic interaction on the chat. We're going to do a quick workshop, a quick interactive, and then we'll probably get to some questions. Okay. So here's my question for you. How many accounts for $100,000 customers can one CSM manage per year? So if your ACV is roughly, so there's going to be relatively enterprise customers, 100K. How many can they, under 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, or over 100? All right, we're getting a lot of A's. Getting some B's. Okay, this is awesome. Okay, we're getting a mix of A and B's, which is great. If anyone said over 100, I'd be very, very scared. So one way before we get into the answer, depends on the support model, let's get into what that support model should look like. So one of the things that we do when we think about capacity planning is we don't just do, how much does it cost to manage those customers and how many customers do we need? Because as we've proven, when you if you keep your customers for longer, you increase the profitability. So cost to serve becomes a very, such a such a minuscule amount compared to the opportunity. What we need to think about is, what do we actually need to do to help support these customers? So the first thing that we need to think about is, how many meetings do we need to have? And I hate thinking about meetings. No one likes meetings, but the reality is we manage our customers through a variety set of meetings, especially on the enterprise side. I know there's some people here who have lower touch, and I'll get to that in a minute. But we're going to talk about this at the enterprise level. So monthly meetings, what do we have monthly meetings for? We think about, we have early adoption, we have change management. Oh, this happened. We have ongoing use and impact. Those are the types of meetings we might have on a more frequent cadence, right? And then we have quarterly meetings. Those things are often like different themed executive business reviews. Let's talk about impact. Let's talk about opportunities. Let's talk about renewals. We've actually listed all these out, renewals. Let's talk about expansion. So those are the types of quarterly meetings we're going to have. Then we also have biannual meetings. And if you're not doing these with your larger customers, I strongly encourage you to start considering doing some of these. These can be how I love to do biannual meetings are workshop style. So interactive, these are a great opportunity for your champions to bring in other peers who might not be doing things. So it's a great way for them to start collaborating, and gives you opportunity for cross-sell and collaboration to really drive that internal. So you then come to this, you become a facilitator essentially, whatever topic your product or your service does, and you help that organization think about how they can more strategically think about that topic. So we used to do these a lot at Influitive with advocacy. And I would host these workshops, or my team would host these workshops. Let's talk about advocacy at your company. I remember very clearly doing this one day at Salesforce. We brought in 8 different divisions of Salesforce. Some of them were using our products, some of them weren't. And the topic was, let's talk about advocacy and let's be agnostic. And I was the expert in advocacy. And that's the cool thing. Like, you're the experts in your space, not necessarily your product, but your space. And so as a service, you're going to host this workshop. There was this unbelievable moment where I remember Erica Cool, shouted, let's just stop talking about what if we didn't use Influitive, right? So I'm in the room, she's like, sorry, Julie. And I'm like, that's okay. We're here to talk about advocacy, whether you use our platform or not. The purpose is to talk about advocacy and spreading that across the organization. Now, of course, the result of that were 3 more divisions ended up using Influitive, but that's because we talked about advocacy and we were a strategic partner in it. So these workshops are really, really critical. And then we have ad hoc meetings. These are the hardest ones to measure because you can't plan them out, right? They happen when triggers such as a new decision maker comes, or there's low usage and you notice that your health score, is pinging away saying, this is red, or there's an advocacy opportunity. So all those are ad hoc, and some of them take longer to deal with than others, but we've done our best to model them out on a general average. So if we think about all of those meetings that happen, so all the monthly, quarterly, biannual, and ad hoc meetings, how long it takes. So we have to prep for those meetings. We have to prep to, either before and after. Then we actually have to have those meetings. How many do we need to have per year? That all comes up to a total of about 70 hours per account per year. All right. We have 2,000 work hours a year. And we utilize about 70% of that for client work. 30% on, admin, Zoom coffee chats, because we no longer have water cooler. We no longer have ping pong, maybe ping pong with your kids, walking the dog, whatever it is now. But we use about 70% of that, which means we have 1,400 hours to spend with our clients, which means we have 20 accounts. And that's it. And if you actually model out what that could look like, I can really encourage you to do that for your organization. What type of meetings do you need to be having in order to effectively support your customers? Now, a good way to do this for your lower ACV clients is to take these, you're probably not going to be doing workshops, so you can take the biannual meetings out. Ad hoc is the thing that's going to drown you. I would take quarterly meetings, and maybe you want to do them biannually. Maybe you want to do them in group settings, and you're obviously not going to necessarily have the monthly meetings, but those monthly meetings should have themes around them, and you can scale those through different email communications, video communications, webinars, those types of things. So we're going to get to how do we achieve this? How are we going to improve performance? And that gets to our principle number 5. Small improvements over time have a large impact. So how are we going to improve this in performance? Three tips: time, process and structure, and continuous improvement. Let's talk about time. All right. When clients first come to us, the decision-making process is as follows. You have an initiator, you have the decision maker who makes the call, and you have an end user. All right. Now, after that initial introduction, the decision maker and the end user are usually most involved. But at some point, usually after the sales to CS handoff, or maybe after, during the kickoff, the decision maker is no longer part of the process. Why is that? Often it's time, right? The decision maker doesn't have time to spend all of their time with you as a vendor. They just assume that things are going to be happening. But how do we keep that decision maker engaged? Because they are critical to the success. And the problem is that so often we're just like, we'll get them engaged. We lose touch of this. And then when there's a problem, we all of a sudden have to engage the decision maker again, but that's the wrong time to engage them. So how do we keep the decision maker engaged ongoing without using up their time? Well, this is one of my hottest tips of the season, which is asynchronous video. If how many of you, I'd love to know, how many of you are using asynchronous video in your communications with your clients? Anyone? I don't see any hands up right now. All right. Whew, this is going to be mind blowing. All right. So I'm using here. Yay, Tori, you're using it. Awesome. Okay. So this is actually, I shared this. This is actually me and yesterday's video that I shared with a client. So the best way to use this with customers is, so you have a meeting with the end user, record the meeting, but also record another video that actually speaks to the decision maker. Hello, decision maker. We just had a meeting. We talked about this. Here's a recording of the meeting if you want to watch this. We just confirmed that this is what you're looking to achieve this year. Here are the metrics we're trying to achieve this quarter. Is that accurate? Call it out. Call it out in a video. You can call it out in an email. Engage them. 2 minutes. They are going to watch that because it's 2 minutes long. And you've specifically asked them a question. Now, all of a sudden, the decision maker is forced to stay engaged throughout the process. And now when you need them, they're there and they know. And also they have the opportunity to say, no, that's not what we're trying to do here, right? Or you can use it to build on and say, hey, this is what we agreed to. Does this align with some of the strategies that you're doing at your level? Do you want to have a conversation about that? Right? Again, you're not abusing their time, but if something's off or that it prompts them to think of something, it gives them that ability. All right. So that's the first thing, time. Process and structure. So we talked about the core moments that matter in CS: onboard, impact use, renew and grow. You should be creating a proactive process for that customer journey and all of those key moments and all of those meetings that need to happen, and the end goal of what needs to happen in all of those meetings, mapping those out. And then you have those different triggers. What are those triggers? When can they happen? What should you do about them? So in the playbooks that we design at that customer journey, and then we design a whole trigger playbook to help get people back on track. And then you have the customer health that helps wrap it all up and makes it a little bit more automotive. So we save time, we become more efficient, we engage the decision maker, and we create process and playbooks. Now we're going to talk about continuous improvement. We have those playbooks. What are those playbooks built on? They should be built on blueprints. How do you have an EBR? How should you have customer-centric conversations with clients to drive impact? How do you assure that everything's set with an end goal? You build out those blueprints that make up the playbooks, and then you break it down to what skills do your CSMs need to have in order to have that conversation. How do I start a meeting? How do I ask questions to a decision maker to uncover impact? So you break down those skills. Then you practice, you role play, you listen to calls. Then you do it, right? Go out there, have customer calls, listen to them, practice, and then you use those calls and you use those call recordings to coach. And then you continue to iterate on it. So, hey, we've noticed after listening to 40 calls that the way we've structured these types of, the way we structured the way that we're talking about these features or the stories that we're using to help create that point is not in line with what we're trying to achieve. And then you adjust the blueprints, you adjust the playbooks. Are any of you using call recordings? I know it's become a trend that's taken off in sales over the last 5 years, and it's starting to gain traction in the world of CS. We often use, our clients are using Chorus or Gong. We've actually started implementing some of our blueprints into Gong recording because it provides some of that AI technology to be able to, to help with that coaching and scaling it. I see a lot of people are using Gong as well. So we're just going to recap really quickly and we're going to open it up for any questions at the end. So our core principles that we've talked about today are building recurring revenue as a result of recurring impact. That was the foundation that we build it all on. So if you disagree with that, we'll rehash that later. That's essentially number one. The CS model is no longer additive, it's multiplicative. And that's the best way to measure CS is with impact. And by doing that, we are going to achieve profitability, and small improvements can have a major impact. You are all so great. Love all of the interaction. Love the videos. Thank you so much. We share all of our content on LinkedIn. We are oh my gosh, what was the model? Beth, Sarah, Ella, what was the model? We are an open something model as a firm. Do you remember what it is?
I was going to say open source, but then I got, it's not open source. As soon as you asked me that question, it flew out of my head.
We are open.
Yeah.
We share all of our content. We have books on Amazon. We share our research papers, and we share a lot on LinkedIn. So here, if you want to throw your camera up, you can grab my LinkedIn, you can connect with me or follow me. So that way you can see all of the content that we continue to produce. And our next web, we're going to host another workshop. If you have any peers or colleagues or friends who you think would enjoy this, feel free to send them to our next workshop, which is going to be on June 2nd. And I will also share that on LinkedIn. But let's open this up to any questions or there is no link to the workshop. I know I should share it. We will share it out. Maybe Ella, you could actually probably put in the chat because I'm sure you actually have the link to that workshop. So this is why the workshop's a week later, because I didn't want Ella to be on vacation without her. I don't know anything. Who has any questions for us? Or Beth, do you want to share?
Yeah, I'm going to throw up a question to get us started, but throw some in the chat if you think of things. I'm going to combine a couple of them here. There were some questions about how to do this and get alignment from different stakeholders who might perceive impact differently. And even more specifically, somebody was asking about a product-led company. Like, how do you use this information to convince people to align around something?
Okay, so let's go back to the concept of recurring impact. So there's two main things that I see are often missed in the world of customer success. Number one is understanding what impact is. I'm going to give you an example of impact. Okay, so when we all need to get places. Sometimes public transportation isn't the way we want to get there. So we buy a car, right? So, the analogy we used to use was getting to the office, but none of those are doing that anymore. So maybe it's going to a cottage, right? So we are going to the store on our fun outing of the day for those of us who are still in lockdown. So you buy a car, which you think is impact, but really that's the promise of achieving value. You buy a car, but once you get that car, you have to buy insurance. You have to fill it with gas. There's all these other things that you need to do in order to achieve the impact you're looking for, which is getting to that final destination. Whereas when you call an Uber or a taxi or a Lyft, you get immediate impact. You call it, they arrive, you get in, you get to your destination pretty much immediately. And you can get that recurring impact over and over and over again. So when we think about impact for our organization, think about it in terms of peeling back those layers of the onion, because so often, and I saw it here in the chat, you all threw up some really great start of examples driving value in terms of what impact means to your organization or you as CS, but how do you go further? What is the actual impact that gets the customer to what they're trying to achieve? And so often that is, I was talking to a client yesterday. It's like, okay, the first thing they gave me was impact was making sure that they're helping their manufacturers be more efficient. Okay, well, at the end of the day, what does efficiency get them? So efficiency gets them the ability to make less mistakes. If they make less mistakes, they save more time and they save costs on materials. Now we're starting to get to impact. What does it mean if you're saving time? So I encourage you, whether you have, $100,000 customers, $1 million customers, or, $10 a month customers, really honing into the impact that your customers are achieving and the impact for every single persona. So, persona is such a term that we use for marketing very often. So marketing personas are who should we target? How do we target them? How do we get them to pay attention to us? The missing element of personas is who are the people we're connecting, who are our real clients, who are the decision makers, who are our champions, who are our end users, and what do they care about on an emotional level and on a rational level. Emotionally, I care about using this product because it's going to help me make less mistakes so that way I don't get fired. It's going to help me do my job better so I can get a promotion. It's going to help me save time so I can end my day an hour early and make dinner for my family or go for a run. Those are types of emotional impact that change based on the different personas that you're interacting with. So if you don't have personas in your organization, again, it doesn't matter what size, really understanding what that means, because that's going to help fine tune your communication. And then on product-led growth, that's all about scalability. So the way your customers interact with your product, is that helping them achieve impact? Are you showcasing new features and functionality consistently to help get them to upsell? Are you like boxing it in? Are you gating those features and functionality to help create upsell opportunities? And are those gated features based on impact? And are they compelling enough? I hope that answered your question. Are there other ones? This chat's gone wild, so I can't actually keep track of it all. Are there any other questions that anyone has, or does anyone have anything that they want to shout out at the end of this? I have a question for y'all. What does 3.0 look like? Let's just get companies to adopt this 2.0. This is enough of a challenge for now, and then we'll go further. Can everyone quickly throw in the chat before you leave? What is one main takeaway that you got from today's session? What is one main takeaway? It can be something that you're going to think about. It can be something even better that you're going to implement, by next week or this month. Tell me what a good takeaway is. I want to please throw it in the chat. And I want to thank you all for today's session. Thank you so much for joining. I look forward to seeing you all and continuing the conversation on LinkedIn or other social channels. I love this. Don't leave the VRBR without asking why. Leona, that's a great one. Measure more. Yes, measure, measure, measure. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.